Welcome to the Prepped and Polished podcast, the podcast that empowers you to take control of your education. Featuring weekly interviews with influencers in the world of education, as well as tutoring tips, lessons, and updates. And now, here's your host, Alexis Avila.
Hey everyone, this is Alexis Avila of Prepped and Polished, tutoring and test prep that provides in-person and online tutoring and test preparation for all the exams for college entrance, grad school entrance, private school entrance, academic subject tutoring such as math, science, English languages, study skills coaching. For more info about that, check out preppedandpolished.com, and also make sure to sign up for our monthly newsletter. Just go to preppedandpolished.com and sign up today. Get to know the Prepped and Polished community. Find us on Facebook, Prepped and Polished, Twitter at Prepped Polished, and Instagram, Prepped and Polished 1. To our listeners, you can submit a question at any time to radio@preppedandpolished.com. I love hearing from you. I welcome you to the Prepped and Polished podcast, where we interview amazing and inspiring guests in the world of education, as well as offer tutoring and test prep tips, lessons, and updates. Our interview series starts right now with episode 58 with Dr. Nicole Issa. Nicole is a licensed psychologist and co-founder of Azimuth Psychological, a psychological testing and therapy practice with locations in the greater Boston area. Among Nicole's various specialties and interests, one of those specialties, she does a lot of work with individuals and families who identify with the LGBTQIA community. On today's show, Dr. Issa will talk about some of the struggles students with LGBTQIA face and how therapy can help empower the LGBTQIA students. Dr. Issa, thanks for coming on the Prepped and Polished podcast. How are you today?
I'm well. How are you?
Doing great. I thought we could start off by you focusing on some pivotal moments that have brought you here to speak with us today as a psychologist and then a co-founder of your psychology practice, Azimuth Psychological.
Okay, sounds great.
So,
do you want me to start by sort of telling you how Azimuth came to be?
Sure, but before that, tell us just a little bit about your background as a psychologist, some of your experience.
Sure. Yeah, it was sort of an interesting background, or at least I think it's sort of interesting. I didn't anticipate becoming a psychologist. I worked for a long time in hospitality and sort of thought that would be what I ended up doing.
Oh, wow.
And then so I think over time I started to sort of have this itch to do something different, and maybe I had this sort of interest in science and helping people, and sort of psychology sort of brought that all together. So I started out by getting my master's in clinical psychology, and then I thought, I felt like I didn't know enough, and so that's why I pursued a doctorate at MSPP, and through my training, I sort of worked at many different places, at hospitals and college counseling centers, state facilities, methadone clinics. So I sort of had a really diverse breadth of experience, and sort of decided that I wanted to try on private practice when I was a postdoc. So I did that for a little while, and then I decided, hey, I think this is for me. And that's sort of when I met Jana, and we decided to open up Azimuth.
Oh, that's awesome. Really cool. I didn't know a lot of that, so that's awesome. So what types of services does Azimuth provide?
Well, so we provide psychological testing, therapy, consultation. It might sound trite to say, but we sort of provide everything.
That's okay.
And we do. We're committed. What's different about us, I will say, is that we're committed to providing high quality care. And I know a lot of people might say that, but we really believe that. We make sure that we're hiring people at the doctoral level, not because we think that anyone who doesn't have a doctorate isn't good enough, but we just feel like if we can provide the highest quality care, why don't we do that? We make sure that each psychologist really hones in on their specialty, knows what they're doing, is excited about the work, just like we are. So it's a really fun group to have and to be with, just because we're all excited about the work. We all are interested in different things, which allows us sort of to cover a lot of different areas of specialty. So, if you were to call and say, I'm struggling with substance issues, we have a woman on staff that specializes in that, whereas, Dr. Court specializes in psychological testing. So it's an exciting group to be with. And that's why I say we sort of do everything, because we cover a lot of ground.
Fantastic. And you do a lot of your work with the LGBT community, LGBTQIA. Can you first explain for people who are horrible at acronyms what LGBTQIA stands for?
Sure. So it's lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, questioning, intersex, and ally.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
it's a lot of letters there. So basically, and that's
talk about the work you do with this population of students.
Oh, of course. So most of my work actually is within the LGBTQIA community. And, the work, it's like any other, piece of work, if you will. I mean, a lot
Sure.
of folks who may identify as gay, bisexual, transgender, any of those things, are struggling with the same things that everybody else is, right? So you may
Sure.
identify as gay, but you may also be anxious. And maybe your presenting issue is not the fact that maybe you're gay, but, because I guess I would contend that's really not an issue. But that, you're anxious. But I think what happens, and I think even if we talked about the history of psychology, a lot of these folks feel marginalized, and they're not sure which provider they could see and who's going to be accepting and who's going to be affirming. And so by taking this affirmative stance and by saying, like, I'm a safe person, Azimuth is a safe place, we're letting the community know that we're here, and that we're not going to pathologize them in any way. I think they have, homosexuality was a diagnosable mental condition until 1972. So there's a lot of stigma out there, I think, about therapy, and people worry about it. And so we want the community to know that's not the type of place that we are, and that Azimuth is a place where you can come and we can talk about coming out, or we don't have to talk about coming out. We can talk about it. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about, just like seeing any other provider. I will say, in part of the work, is also education. So, I do a lot of work with the community. I would probably tell you that on my caseload, that's 85% of the work that I do. But the other piece is education, going out in educating other psychologists, other medical professionals about how do we sit with members of this community and make them feel safe, make them feel comfortable. And so, that type of work, I'm incredibly proud of, because it bleeds out from my practice into other practices, which is really exciting.
That's terrific. Now, do you find that some of the challenges that the LGBT community faces today are some of the challenges they faced in the past? You kind of shed light a little bit about the marginalization, but just was wondering if there's some new challenges. I don't know, with social media out there. I don't know. But
yeah. I think that things have gotten better? Sure. But I also think that in a lot of ways things are still the same, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. People come into my office, and they're dealing with families who do not accept them for who they are. They're dealing with being made fun of at school. They're dealing with feeling like they, if they dress in a certain way, or they say certain things, that they're going to be outed, and if they're outed, that means that they're different and they're weird. So I think some of the problems are still the same. My hope is that the people around them are changing and are different. People like teachers or psychologists, or people who are accepting and understand that sexuality is fluid, and that this is just a facet of who we are. But certainly, I think people are struggling with being marginalized and oppressed, and I think it's in part a societal issue, and a systemic issue, probably from the top down.
Definitely. And I was wondering if you had some tips for anyone listening who might be of LGBTQIA and who might be struggling in society.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would just, I mean, as cliche as this sounds, I would tell them to hold on. I mean, there's people out there that support you. And, maybe everybody has that person. It's the hard part is finding them. And if you're in a place where you haven't found that person yet, I would just sort of say, hang on and hold steady and seek support where you can. And if you can't, there's a number of resources. If you Google It Gets Better Online, there's a phone number that you can call and talk to somebody if you're sort of in a dark place. If you feel like you want to come in and talk to somebody, you can always call us, or you can call us and I can help refer you to anybody, even outside of the Boston area.
Absolutely.
I would say that's the most. Yeah, I would say the most important thing is to find support, and maybe secondly, to access any internal resources that you have. To be able to cope. It's almost unimaginable to have to cope with feeling like you can't be who you are. But if there's anything that makes you feel better, whether that's talking to a friend or writing in a journal, I mean, I think just whatever we can access until you can get support is important.
That's awesome. Dr. Issa, what do you find most rewarding about your work?
Many things, but I guess the most rewarding thing is sitting with people, which I think is such an honor, and watching them come out of what seems like the most dark place and realize that things really do, they get better and their lives start to change, and they meet people and they feel fulfilled. And so once that happens, you sort of see symptoms sort of wash away, and that's really rewarding.
And what's next for Azimuth Psychological? What kinds of new, exciting stuff are you working on lately?
Well, most recently we just opened another office, so we're going to be we are in Wellesley, providing psychological testing and therapy in the suburbs. So that just launched a couple weeks ago, and we're really, really excited about that. We've had a lot of folks sort of drive into Boston and tell us that there's waiting lists out in the suburbs, and we thought, well, why not bring Azimuth to them if we can make that a little bit easier.
That's awesome. And what's the best way to get a hold of you and work with you and your practitioners?
Well, the best way is probably you can call or you can email. Do you want me to give you the phone number?
Sure. Yeah. Let's have it out there.
Sure. Okay. It's 617-431-3749.
Perfect.
And that's our main line.
And email is, what is the email?
Well, so the email is Nicole. If you wanted to just email me personally, it's Nicole, so Nicole at azimuthpsych.com. So that's AZIMUTHPSYCH.com.
That's awesome. And to the kids or teens listening to the podcast, listening to us today, any advice before they cross that bridge into college and young adulthood?
That's a good question. I guess the best advice is just to sort of trust your own instincts. I think a lot of kids that I see who are sort of transitioning from high school to college, they're anxious, but they're excited, and which is really normal, right? It's normal to be anxious about leaving home and going to college. It's also normal to feel excited about that. I think the best thing you can do is trust your instincts and seek support, and I think you'll be fine.
Nicole, thanks for joining us on the Prepped and Polished podcast. Really appreciate your time.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
And this wraps up our show today with psychologist Dr. Nicole Issa. To learn more about Dr. Issa's amazing work with students with eating disorders, depression, substance abuse, anxiety, stress management, and her overall work with individuals and families who identify with the LGBTQIA community, please visit www.azimuthpsych.com. I'm going to spell that for you. www.azimuthpsych.com. And check out episode 59, where we'll be doing our next tutoring tip episode. Thank you for joining us on the Prepped and Polished podcast. Now go out there and take control of your education.
You've been listening to the Prepped and Polished podcast. For more information, check out preppedandpolished.com. Also, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for listening. Class dismissed.